then I just started the recording, and then I'll just be a minute while I'm looking for something to talk about.
Okay.
Alright, good bubble.
Oh shit. I need some heals, yeah. Our Ana's actually pretty good.
Alright. Alright, so,
Kind of over.
so far, fantastic bubbles, and mechanics haven't looked too bad either. Though it doesn't look like we keep getting up to 100 energy, but it doesn't look like we're doing much with it. So sometimes we're playing a little bit passive when we don't need to play passive. Like we'll kind of poke in there and then back up instantly, and then poke in there and then back up instantly when we don't need to necessarily. So make sure that we're playing aggressive when we can play aggressive, and then we're backing up when we need to back up. So you know, if you still have health and you have bubble and you don't have a reason to back up, don't back up.
Okay. Oh, I actually thought of a question. Whenever I get my ult, or not my ult, but my charge higher, who should I? Wow, that was really bad. Who should I really be trying to take out?
Yeah, so that was the other thing I was noticing, and I wanted to. I'll go over that target priority like after the fight here, or maybe actually after we'll go over to after the game, because it's just a little bit longer, and I want to give you time to talk about. Want to give time to talk about other things, look at other things.
That was a nice ult.
Keep in mind, I'll explain later, like I'll go more into depth, but keep in mind for now that the answer to that question is not tanks, right? Anything will not but
Okay.
tanks.
Okay. No, I tried to shield Mercy. Fuck. Oh shit. Okay.
Alright, so the grab there got kind of whiffed right and hit his shield. Make sure we're paying attention to things that can, you know, block our grab, because it is a very, very important ultimate. It's probably like the best ultimate in the game, I would say, for Zarya grab, and we want to make sure, or one of the best ultimates in the game, sorry. So you just want to make sure we're putting a lot of effort into actually making sure it's landing and not getting blocked.
Okay. Hold on 1 second.
Alright.
Okay. Alright, sorry about that.
Yeah, good.
I'm even stronger. Barrier activated.
Oh, I should have shielded them.
Ready for battle. Is that all you've got?
Let's get this all out there.
You're covered.
Oh, before
Good.
I actually watched some of your videos last night.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I thought they were interesting. I liked watching them.
Alrighty. So there's a lot of times where we just kind of sit around. So when we're too far away to actually be doing much, just make sure we're spamming in right clicks so that we can actually be doing damage and like charging ults and whatnot, right? So just be lugging right clicks into their team. Okay, there
Mm.
we push in a little bit too far, so that comes into terms of like positioning and making sure that we're not out in the open, and we also push really, really far past our team, and that kind of split us and put us off on our own, where it's very easy to kill us. So make sure we're sticking with our team, we're not going off on our own, and that we're also not walking out into the open. And we can maybe talk about that a little bit more when we go after this game's done.
Okay.
That tickles. Hit me with your best shot.
Does anybody have any ults? No.
Barrier is on you. 60 seconds. Ready for battle. Maximum charge. Get in there. Огонь по готовности.
And nice grab.
Your best shot.
Shit.
Alright, yeah, we'll have some stuff to talk about after this game's done.
Okay.
30 seconds remaining. Just like in training. I'm taking care.
Yeah, you're pressing. It seems like you're messing up that jumping a little bit. Keep in mind you're pressing jump and right click at the exact same time. And there's no order to them. I'll make sure we're not running into the grab. And that looks like it's game.
Yeah.
My will is unbroken.
Alright, so let's leave here. So I'm going to be streaming if you want to take a look over on Discord. Alright, so couple different things. First off, let's start with the target priority, since that was one where we said we were gonna go over. So target priority, I said not tanks. So reason why is tanks are really hard to kill. Tanks have 2 to 3 times the health of other characters. They have shields, they have tanking abilities, and on top of that, tanks just don't have as much statistical output. So tanks are a very important role to have, but tanks, their job is to create space for the other roles, whereas DPS do the damage and supports do the healing. So they have the statistical output, and they're also a lot easier to kill than tanks are. So that means that we don't really want to be focusing tanks. So when we have what we call like equal opportunity, so we could go to a tank or to a support, we would 100% take the support over the tank if we have access to both, right? And sometimes we might want to even make access to both. Like if we, have a tank up there and a support down here, we're not going to chase after the tank up here if we can chase after the support down here, because we have the option to go actively seek them out or to run around and try to get them, right? Now that's not to say that we never shoot at tanks, right? We shoot at tanks when they're low, we shoot at tanks when they're out of position, we shoot at tanks when they're the only thing to shoot at, which is going to be a little, like, especially when you're a tank, like Zarya, that's going to be quite a bit, like where they're just in the front and they're the only thing to shoot at, right? That's when we shoot at tanks, but any other time we're trying to actively shoot at the other things, right? Now, on from there, I'd probably say one of the biggest issues that I'm noticing at the moment coming from you is what you call actions per minute. So what that means essentially is when you take a bronze player and you put them up against like a grandmasters player and compare the two, a Grandmasters player is going to be efficient with every single second of their gameplay where they're doing something constantly, right? They're either constantly shooting, constantly damaging, constantly like bubbling, ulting. They're being efficient with all the time with everything. Whereas a
Mhm.
bronze player might walk around, go pew pew shoot shoot, and then might like kind of stop or reload in the middle shooting, or they might go and then they'll be back to a pow pow shoot shoot, and then they'll like kind of wander around, and then they'll come back, and then they'll go pop out, shoot, shoot, right? And it's just a lot less efficient where they're not doing as much as often as they should be. So actions per minute is making sure that we're just doing more. So a few different things that I was noticing in actions per minute was like sometimes like a fight would start and we just kind of like chill in the back. So like for example, Monkey would be like actively in front of us getting shot at, and then like for example, like this is just one of the fights where like let's say like we were fighting over it was a choke point, right? So let's say it was like this thing right here, and Monkey went in there and he's fighting, he's brawling and whatever. We bubbled him, and then we shot a little bit, and then we were like, I wonder what ults they have, and we backed up and pressed tab, and I'm like, all right, you know the fight's happening, right? Right.
Yeah.
And then there's times like for example where we're just kind of sitting around at the choke where like for example if we're sitting back here, and we'll talk about this in a second of when to use both, but we could just be lobbing and right clicks, right, to get ult charge and do damage and whatnot, right, because it's a long distance ability. So that's another example of something we could have been doing. And then sometimes also like we would just like do the thing that I was talking about before, like where we would kind of be like ready to be poking. We'd kind of go in, shoot, and then we'd like reload when we had like 60 ammo, right? Or we'd go in and shoot, and then we'd like kind of back up and for a little bit, even though we had full HP and we had a bubble, right? And we were kind of good to go still. When we should just like keep going in there, keep shooting, and then we like, oh snap, I'm low, back up, right? Or if we have a reason to back up, we back up. But we don't have to back up if we don't have a reason to back up. Another thing was, I think we weren't really focused with what we were shooting at. A lot of the time, we'd come into fights and we'd kind of be like, I'm going to shoot you. Wait, never mind. I'm going to shoot you now. Oh, no, I'm going to get you, right? And we'd kind of like keep swapping between people. And keep in mind that we want to probably stay on one person, because when we keep swapping in between people, we're going to be spreading out the damage between everyone and actually never killing anybody, while also just not doing enough damage to where someone else can follow up. We're just kind of letting them get healed and get away and get health packs and whatnot, and then now we just didn't really accomplish anything when we could beam one person down and then beam the second person down, right, and then go from there. Whereas a lot of time we weren't really focused with what we were shooting at. We just kind of were like, I'm going to put out damage rather than I'm going to try to get a kill, right? Your objective should, like, unless, like, if you're in the fight brawling and not just back here and going shoot, right, like from a distance, right, then our objective should be, I'm going to get a kill, not I'm going to do damage, right? So that's just a lot of actions per minute stuff. We just want to make sure we're doing more as often as we can. Now, when to right click versus left click, right? Sometimes we were left clicking a little bit too far, and a lot of the times I think we were right clicking, misusing right click. So let's go over when to use both of them. So basically, left click is more consistent damage, whereas right click is a little bit more is more bursty, as well as it has more range. So when you use both, is you use left click within left click range. So left click range is going to look like this. When you step outside of it, which is 16 meters, so it reaches up to 15 meters, which is this right here. You can tell that sometimes you're trying to beam them from like too far away, and you'll notice doing anything if you don't see their health bar going down, if you don't hear sound effect, and if you, the big one is on top of your crosshair, you're going to notice a white markers there that's called hit markers. So you have a lot of different things that tell you you're doing damage. Just pay attention to that. If we're too far away, don't use your beam, use your right click, right, because you're not going to be actually doing any damage, or you can just move forwards a little bit, right, and into the left click range, either or. But just don't be beaming when you're too far away, right? If you're within this range, you should almost basically be constantly beaming. You shouldn't really be right clicking too often, but there are some times where you can be right clicking, especially when you're trying to burst someone down. So why you want to burst someone down, right? Why? Basically, if you kill someone faster, they have less time to get away, less time to heal, less time to, you use movement abilities, whatever. You just you secure the kill, you don't let them escape, right? Now, when we have right click, right, we can actually, at this health, we can actually right click melee, and that bursts their health down like really fast, especially when you're high energy. That's going to be doing even more, and it could be even, you could even do that like when they're like half HP, but here we have to do it a little bit lower since we're at 0. And we want to be doing that so we can burst them down. So we would do this, and then that'd be the combo we'd kind of go for, and then that's how we kill people faster, right, and secure the kill. I just didn't see us doing that. And then sometimes we just kind of be like right here, we just kind of throw in right clicks, right, when that's not really what we want to be doing, instead of probably left clicking, right? Now, besides that, grab does definitely need some work, though we'll talk about that more, I guess, later. Bubbles so far looking like probably one of the most solid parts of our kit, and very much better. I think you're in silver, right? You say you're in silver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm in bronze right now, actually.
Bronze. Okay, yeah. best bronze bubbles I've ever seen. The people in plat have worse bubbles. All right.
That's good.
So yep,
That's I got something good going.
good bubbles. Though of course not perfect, but still looking really good. And then I'm trying to think, was that it? I think that was it for now. So I think you probably just go ahead and get into a queue now.
Okay. Just another quick one.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna try and apply the things you said.
Alrighty.
How long have you been coaching for?
Just over 2 years.
Wow, that's amazing, dude.
Yep, doing a while. I think this year's was the kind of I took some some breaks at the beginning and it wasn't like as kind of solid all the way through, but it started to be a consistently full-time thing.
Do you feel like whenever you first started versus right now, do you feel like Overwatch's player base has kind of like gotten lower or like stayed the same?
Um, 2 years ago, I mean, I definitely think it's gotten lower, though I don't think like I would say that the game is quote unquote dead right now.
Yeah.
I don't think a game's dead until it doesn't have a following, or queue times are taking an insanely amount of time, like insanely long amount of time, right? Whereas you can get into a game like if it's taking you an hour to get in a game like every single time, then yeah, maybe the game's dead. But 10-minute
Yeah.
queues on DPS and faster queues and supports and DPS, tell me that maybe the game's not dead, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay.
Oh, might want to eat that fire strike there to get some energy. So we always seem to be like always wanting to use our projected and then our personal. Keep in mind, if you see an opportunity for your personal, go ahead and use your personal first, right? There's no specific order in which you need to use them, especially if you see an opportunity. Oh, so
Oh.
keep in mind your bubble can break. We kind of got really aggressive when we didn't have the health to back it up. So just be careful about that. Oh, we're also going to talk about positioning. That's the other thing I was going to talk about, right? So just make sure we're not out in the open, right, for too long. So there, if we're trying to like peek with the bubble, don't peek too far away from the monkey bubble, right? Because you're going to need that for cover.
Play like corners and stuff.
Yep, exactly, right. Don't be on the open. You play corners. You play cover.
Okay.
Right, don't be afraid to eat projectiles are really easy sources of energy, because it's very easy to predict when projectiles are coming because they're projectiles. So Ryan fire strikes have passed by us a couple times. There's a soldier helix a little bit ago.
Oh, did I get the soldier? Yeah.
Yep, a little bit more focused. I like that. We actually beamed down the Mercy and the Soldier, so that's really good. Though we did, I think, forget about our projected bubble for a little bit, and then that meant that we were at like a kind of a lower energy than we could have been. And then also again, we were just kind of sitting out on point, which is gonna be a little bit harder because there's not any cover on that point. But you still want to be careful about cover usage, which we'll talk about after this game is done, I think. Wow, this is a fast game if we win it. Nice bubble.
Oh,
Nice.
I tried to get a bubble on that guy.
When you try right-clicking, when you are right-clicking, like when someone you're always trying to hit basically people's feet. Now you do want to be hitting them with it, right? Because you do more damage when you're hitting them. But if you're aiming at their feet rather than their bodies, then even if it misses them, then it's hitting the ground and doing splash damage. So essentially, it's like if you miss, then you're doing splash damage, and it's not like you don't need headshots with it, so you don't need the aim hand level. with your right clicks. So you just want to be aiming at people's feet essentially with your right clicks, and then that can also boop them up in the air, which can make them easier to actually hit
Okay.
if you don't finish them off with it. So that was a pretty fast game. I think let's just talk about cover usage and positioning real quick, and then you can go ahead and hop into another game. I'm gonna be streaming real quick because there's just been some times where we've walked out in the open. So
We are strong.
again, remember when you're doing this thing, it's you're right clicking and jumping at the exact same time. One other thing I would say as well, because I forgot to mention this, is try not to. This one isn't going to be too bad of a thing, right? Is spam jumping. Is just constantly doing this, right? While you're walking around, just jump, 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 jump. Now, this one's not too bad of a thing, especially when you're in bronze. Like, honestly, there's much more important things to work on. Because this isn't gonna be super important until you're higher ranked, but it's just a bad habit to be in, as it can make it easier for you to get shot and headshot, because people can track that, and when you go up, you have to come down, so that becomes easily trackable. Though of course, like I said, out of everything we're talking about, this probably be like very low on the list to work on, right? Um, Positioning, right? If we are standing here and the enemy team is standing over there, they're all 6 people shooting at us. It takes us 1, 2, 3 seconds to get behind cover. Now, even if we bubbled, even if we did this, right? We died in that time it took us to get here. Now, when we're behind cover, right, we cannot get shot at. You cannot shoot through walls, right? You're safe here, but like we said before, in the time it took us to get there, because it was so far away, we died. Now from here we can do relatively the same thing. Now, like, you're not within beam range, which you might want to be, but we can bubble, we can shoot from here, and if we wanted to get closer, we can always move. There's cover all over the place. We can move to a different cover, right, where we are in range. Now, from cover, right, it takes us now half of a second to get behind this cover, and that means that this is much better positioning because we are now a lot safer. Good positioning is the usage of cover, whereas bad positioning is the absence of cover, right? Lots of different types of cover, right? You can use slopes, you can use pillars, so like in between right clicks, for example, right? Because it's a pretty slow, slow charge up, sorry, there's the kind of delay in between each of your shots, right? We can be doing that when we're reloading. We can do it when we're low health, when we're being shot at, right? We use corners the same way, like you were talking about before, right? You have you have little objects you can use, right? Like this. You can use a payload like this, right? You have pillar, corner, doorway, corner, right? And then all of high grounds act as natural cover as well, right? So that's what high grounds are fantastic positioning, because they can see us, now they can't see us. You can see us, can't see us, add in a crouch, same thing, right? So all of high grounds act as natural cover. On top of that, there's a lot of different other things for high ground. Most characters in the game can't get to up here, like 2/3 of them can't get to you, and then the ones that can need to use abilities, and then at that point now they're just out of abilities, so a lot more survivability off of that. And then thirdly, you also have a ton more visibility. We can see people over here, over here, over here, and over here, but when we're on a low ground, we can't see over there, we can't see over there, we can't see over there, and we can't see up here on any of the high ground, right? So high ground gives us a ton of visibility as well, right? One quick tech on Zarya just before you probably hop into a queue now, but just keep in mind that your right click projectile and your grav are the exact same projectile. So where our right click's gonna go, so like if we're trying to land a grab, so we can right click here, right click here, right? So now we know the grab is right underneath them, so we can lob a grab in there, and it's going to be in the same place, right? So that's usually you're not going to want to lob in grabs like that, because that means that you're not close enough to do anything into it, and it's also going to be easier to dodge and block and eat. So you're usually not going to want to do that, though that is some situations where that might be helpful, all right? Just don't use that for every single one.
Okay. Okay. Queuing up now.
Alrighty.
So do you do this full time?
Yeah, so I said full time before, but usually it's more like a part time job in both hours and pay rate. It's not really enough to be a full time job at the moment, and it's not necessarily the career that I'm probably going to be going into.
Oh, okay. You in like college or something?
Yeah, I'm going. I'm out of it right now. I'm going back in the fall. Took a break because of COVID and other reasons.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I wouldn't want to be spending like all that money to be sitting in like a dorm. Or, I mean, I am, but I'm not like spending nearly as much because I'm
Oh,
going to a junior college instead
uh,
of a
like
yeah,
is a junior college like a community college?
yeah, like a community college
Uh,
basically. Yeah, exactly. So I'm just doing my general ed. I'm in my second
yeah.
semester of my freshman year. So, oof.
Attackers incoming in 30 seconds. Give it your
Kind of want to play top here.
Yep, it's a good decision, right? And then usually when like cart gets like underneath you, you might want to rotate to the choke, right? Which would be I don't. Are you familiar with the term choke yet?
Yeah, like right there, or right there,
Yep.
right there. Even that corner you could play.
Hmm. Usually you'd want to do the one on your left, like hold that choke.
barriers on you.
Right now, you just
Okay.
want to be right clicking in there, right? Just get some spam damage in. Try to look for bubbles at the moment. Keeping in mind you do have a personal bubble available. Right, again, we kind of like hold on to that one a little bit more often than we do our projected, it looks like. So just make sure you're trying to use that because that is a really good source of energy.
Go, that's more like it. Oh, bring it. You're covered.
Alright, so in that fight, energy is probably the big thing, so bubbles were a little lacking, right? And then that meant that we just didn't get anything done just because we were at 14 energy. Keep in mind that you are up against a pretty tough comp to work with, or to go up against, right? They have a Bastion, so in this comp, we could focus the Bastion. We just want to play extra safe because we're going to get shredded. But then also keep in mind that Bastion's going to be really, really easy to get energy off of, right? So we can get very high energy by just using him to take soak up a bunch of damage.
Go, barrier activated. Get in there.
Oh my goodness.
Alright, so there we were kind of out in the open, and then that results in our deaths. Deaths are almost all the time, 75% of the time, going to be something that we want to cut out of our gameplay because obviously deaths are pretty bad, right? You lose a whole lot of value, you put your team at a disadvantage, and you can't do anything. So we want to stop dying and try to cut out deaths. And the reason why we died there was because we were out of position, right? We were out in the open, and that meant we didn't have any cover, any shields. So we just want to make sure we're playing cover a little bit better.
Okay.
Hit me with your best shot. Charging up. Barriers on you. Go.
Alright, so we'll talk about
Same.
bubbles after this game's done. Go ahead.
I was gonna say,
Hmm.
was it? I think I died a lot because I was just out in the open too much. I
Yep,
feel like.
exactly. And when that's the process of improvement and getting better at anything you're trying to get better at is identify the mistake, right? What did we do wrong? Well, there we what we did wrong was we died, right? And then you can go, okay, well, why did we die, right? What was again emphasize like going into what did I do wrong? So we died there because we were out in the open a whole lot, right? And then finally the second thing is that you're doing is you are going into what could I have done better, like what is the solution to the mistake. So that would be like where could I have positioned instead. So instead of just saying I died because I was out of position, we can say I died because I was out of position and maybe I should have stood next to cover. And then you could even say, like, go in more into detail and say, like, I should have been in the cover on the right side, right? I knew where cover was, but I didn't use it, right? And then finally, the last part to that equation is the application process and making sure we're actually trying to do it in our future games, right? So just make sure you're learning from your mistakes and not just continuing to make them. And then what was the thing we said? Okay, we're going to talk about bubble usage. So bubbles, I'm going to stream again, or I'm actually still streaming because I forgot to turn it off. And what we're doing with them. Also, I forgot we're going to do the strengths and weaknesses real quick after that as well because I forgot to do that. So bubble usage. A lot of times it seems like we're very reactive with our bubbles, right? Which isn't a bad thing. It's pretty decent to be reactive with our bubbles, but there's two kind of sides to the coin, right? With your bubbles, you can use it to tank and to basically you can look to use it to like when they are coming to you to do damage, or you could go to them to make them do damage to you. So for example, a lot of the time we'd kind of like be sitting around this corner, right? And when we're at 0 energy and just and they're kind of slowly creeping up here on the cart or whatever, and we just kind of sit here and wait for them, right? And twiddle our thumbs and go, what? I guess I'm just waiting here for them to give me energy, right? Whereas, for example, what we could do is push up to the corner, right? Shoot at them a little bit, make sure that they're looking at us, and then once they start shooting at us, we bubble. As soon as our bubble breaks or runs out, we duck around the corner, right? Sometimes we'd bubble and walk a little bit too far. Make sure we're not doing that. Make sure we're just kind of peeking the corner, maybe a little bit peeking the corner, but then we're instantly backing up. But a lot of times we just kind of wait for them to come to us for bubbles, whereas we could be going to them and letting them shoot at us, right? So standing still, right? Standing still is going to allow them to shoot at us better, right? Make sure we're shooting at them to kind of draw attention, like, hey, look at me, come shoot at me, right? And then a lot of times we just kind of weren't using bubbles when we were at 0 energy. Keep in mind that when you're at 0 energy, your number one priority is to get high energy, right? Because you literally can't do anything when you're not high energy. Now, so far bubbles have been pretty great, but like I said, it's nothing's gonna be perfect, right? Even if you're a pro, you're gonna have times where you're messing up and things. And but there just looked like bubbles weren't really up to snuff, and then that meant that we were sitting at the end of the game. We were probably averaging energy around probably like 14 or something, right? Where we want to be, a little bit higher with the average energy up to like 60, and that's where actually having high energy and able to do things. So just make sure we're being aggressive and trying to make them shoot at us when we're bubbling, and not just always letting them come to us, because there are multiple times where we just kind of sat back and waited for them to come to us. Also, just out in the open a whole lot, right, when we should have been using cover, and then that resulted in us dying all the time. Also, I think we're going to go over off angles real quick. So we talked about before about how you can look to use target priority, right? But sometimes it's not that easy to get to the things that we want to actually kill, right? You're gonna have shields in the way, we're gonna have tanks in the way, right? So let's say our team, we're actually let's use this one instead, right? So let's say that I'm sorry, I'm changing my mind and I'm brain farting at the moment. So let's say the enemy team's right here. All right, our team's right here. We're fighting over this corner. Shields in the way, tanks in the way. This is what you call the main angle. This is the main way that the main angle your team's fighting from, right? And if we're trying to get to the things in the back line because we want to kill those things, what we can do is we take what you call an off angle, where we're coming in this room. Now we have bypassed the shields, bypassed the tanks, and gotten to the things we want to shoot at, right? Very, very easily. And it's very safe because we can just back up instantly, and it's very, very fast because it only takes us like 2 seconds here. All right, same thing as if we did like something like this where we're enemy team, our team, main angle, right? We can just come up here to the high ground, right? And then now we have bypassed the shields, bypassed the tanks, gotten straight to the back line, right? And we're shooting at what we want to shoot at. So if in that last game you're trying to shoot at the Bastion, because Bastion's kind of rolling us, then we might want to take some off angles, right? Whereas a lot of the times you're just kind of sitting on in main, and that didn't really get us as much as we could have been doing, right? So you just want to try to take off angles to get around them. Almost all high grounds are going to act as off angles, at least if it's in the fight, right? So we're not off angling if they're all the way over there, but we're off angling if they're right here underneath us, right? Because that gets us around shields and tanks. So just look for off angles to try to get around to them, and then you probably look to go ahead and get into another game. That's pretty fast.
Okay. For sure.
Oh yeah. I forgot. I was going to talk about traits and weaknesses. So, bubbles so far looking like one of our strengths. So it's like we just talked about, it is inconsistent. So it's probably going in at like a low to medium thing to work on, unless we see in the next game that's getting even more inconsistent. Ultimate usage. Probably again say it's I've seen 2 so far, and one of them was pretty good, one of them was pretty bad. So again, kind of inconsistent. It's in the middle. That's probably like a medium thing to work on because it's pretty important that you get good grabs in. Mechanics, honestly, looking pretty solid. Knowing actually, but the other thing, like just general mechanics of shooting and stuff, is pretty solid. But the areas we're struggling in are target priority, making sure we're shooting one thing, knowing when to left click and right click, and then actions per minute, which all feed into that kind of that category of mechanics, which means that now that mechanics category is actually looking like it actually needs some improvement. So that's like kind of in the medium to high category of things to work on. Positioning, probably looking like a medium thing to work on because we're actually dying quite a bit. And then awareness, honestly, not too bad on awareness. I haven't seen much that's gone into awareness. For some reason, it's not letting me so it's doing a bug where it doesn't let me actually spectate shoes. So I'm gonna leave them rejoin and see if that helps.
Okay.
Now arriving at Yijang Tower.
Yeah, awareness is a kind of a slow burn thing to work on, like to see if you're struggling with it or not. Yeah, it's not letting me spectate you. Just give it a minute. Usually it sorts itself out. I don't know. Just letting me go between 3 people at the moment.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
You all look like you needed some healing.
Are you able to spectate me?
No, not in the moment. I'm just able to spectate tracers and Mbappe.
Okay.
Alright, I'm gonna try one more leave and then reconnect, and then we might need to just get into a new game here. Yeah, it's a weird bug that happens sometimes.
Now arriving at Yijang Tower.
Oh wait, oh, there we got you. Fix yourself. Okay. Sometimes they're bubbling our other tanks when they kind of have shields up and they're not really doing much. Make sure we're trying to bubble like the Reinhardt when he's getting aggressive and he's pushing in. Alright, that's where we're actually going to get the most value out of it, because then it lets him, actually do things. So it's kind of the same thing on Sigma, where sometimes like we would bubble when he had his shield still up. Look to right click through that thing, as the window doubles your damage, right? And it doesn't double any left clicks because it's beam.
Ah, shit.
Very good. Watch your health bar, right? Pay attention. You might want to grab a health pack, right? Which is right next to us. Oh, there's actually a mega one, like, and then from us there.
I thought that one was mega too, to be honest.
But yep, that's just an awareness thing of making sure we're paying attention to it, right?
Okay, so they're going that way.
Yeah, right now we're looking for, energy. Might not want to stand too far on the edge here for if we know they have a Lucio.
God damn it.
Okay, nice grab. Just looking slightly inconsistent with it. So again, it's looking like, honestly, there's some areas like our mechanics it's a little bit higher and our positioning is a little bit higher, but with a lot of the other stuff, it's looking like we're just needing to make sure we're getting consistent, right? We're sometimes we're good, sometimes we're bad, and you want to iron out the bad times so you're consistently good, right? So you're always doing good, not always doing bad.
Maximum charge.
Oh, she's so low.
Barriers on you. Go. Get in there, Bob. First round.
All right. There we playing a little bit passive when we had health bubble and we were winning the fight, right? Just make sure we're a little bit further push forwards rather than just kind of sitting on point there. I think it'd be good idea to go over how to know whether or not you're winning or losing a fight, because sometimes that looks like it's affecting some of our aggression. Though we'll go over that after this round is done, of course, like I've said 1,000 times.
Okay. Are you still watching me?
Yep.
Practicing that thing you told me, like pressing at the same time. This part of the map I like, because
Yep.
I know how to like flank really easily on this one.
This one's really close in quarters, which Zarya as a character likes. So. Though it might be usually when you're like going on flanks, it's gonna be after you like have energy, right? Otherwise, if you don't have energy, then you're not gonna be able to kill anything. So you might want to only get going off angles and flanks when
Never.
you know, when you have energy to back it up, because you're also not gonna be able to bubble any teammates when you're doing that.
Give me your best shot.
That was a bad bubble.
Massive bubble.
Yeah,
Also-
like whenever it's like me and like whenever I'm last alive, I always try and like put bubbles on my, especially when it's me and like a tank. I'll always bubble my healers and stuff and make sure they don't die. I feel like that's like really important.
That tickles.
Nice bubble. Don't focus the Sigma if you see that he was 1 HP there. Right, so pay attention to health bars because he was really low and he had a Discord on him. Like, even there, he's like 1 HP. Yeah, we kind of weren't looking at him.
Go. Don't hold back. Give me your best shot. Barriers on you. Go.
Good job trying to get around his shield there. It was really nice. Okay, now since the fight's mainly over, I'm going to talk real quick. So, a lot of the times going into more actions per minute stuff is we'll take pauses and breaks when we're going for bubbles. Keep in mind that you probably are going to want to consistent, like constantly be going for damage even while looking for bubbles, right? Because you can basically be damaging, like kind of flick over and bubble, and then keep on damaging, right? Go into a little bit more after this game, but we just kind of take some breaks and pauses when we're going for bubbles a lot of the times.
Огонь по готовности.
Oh,
Oh,
focus
I
grab.
tried to get that run. It's still a decent grab though.
Yeah, no, it was actually
Taylor's
it was
over.
even much better, right? Remember, we were not trying to, even with the grabs, we're not trying to focus things. We're trying to focus the supports. Without the Reinhardt in that meant you could actually kill the Zenyatta and the Lucio even easier. So there we reacted a little bit slowly to the fact that we actually landed the grab, and that meant that Lucio almost got away there. Oh, did you have to go?
Oh. Okay.
Okay, so to reiterate, since I think you left there for a second.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, you're good. That's actually was even better than if you had hit the Reinhardt, because remember, even with our grabs, Reinhardt's not the thing that we want to be focusing. The supports were the things we want to be focusing. And without the Reinhardt, that actually made it 2 times easier to kill the Lucio and the Zenyatta, right? But because we reacted slowly to it, that actually meant that the Lucio almost got away, right? Because the grab ended. All right, so with our bubbles, oh no, I'm not streaming. Whoops, stream.
Huh?
All right. So with our bubbles, sometimes we'll like kind of like be looking for it, and then bubble, right? Whereas what we actually want to be doing is we want to be shooting, like constantly doing something, shooting. Okay, and then we see, okay, wait, we're looking for a bubble. We keep shooting. Okay, this guy on my right needs a bubble. So we're looking, we can like walk in front of them and do this, right? Or we could even like look to the side real quick and bubble them, right? And then that's how we can actually do things while we're landing bubbles. Whereas a lot of times we kind of like, the difference is like we're constantly doing something and then we're kind of going flick bubble, right? Because we're paying attention to him and we're damaging, and we're looking at him, right? And we see, okay, he needs a bubble, flick bubble, versus like, right, and then getting back to our shooting, because sometimes we kind of like, sometimes we just kind of take breaks and pauses, right, where that's just not being efficient with our time.
Yeah.
Now on from there, the difference between a flank and an off angle real quick, right, because we didn't talk about that before, right? Off angle, short and safe and fast, right? Sorry, short and safe. Yep, that's what I meant. It doesn't take a long time, and you're most likely going to stay alive. A flank would be like if you went all the way around, all the way around. Oh, whoops, got stuck. All the way around, all the way around, right? And now we're here. So a flank is much longer. So a flank is long and or dangerous. This is also much more dangerous because we don't really have a way to get back to our team very easily, and we're off on our own, and we don't have healing. Right? So this is a much more dangerous position than the off angles that we talked about were, and thus Zarya probably isn't going to want to really go for flanks really ever. She very much likes off angles, but she does not like flanks. There are some characters in the game that can go for flanks, but not many and not often. And you're gonna want to do that too often on Zarya. So just be careful you're going for off angles and not flanks. All right. And then I think that is it. So why don't we hop in now? Now we're actually gonna go over review over everything we've talked about, and then go over like what are the main points, and then finally wrap up the session from there. So starting off with bubbles, right? Make sure that with our bubbles that we're trying to keep them consistent, and we're using them when we know people are going to shoot at them, and we're not just purely reacting with them, but we're also looking to get energy. Energy last game was much better just because we're actually looking for it this time, right? So make sure we're looking for it. We're not just kind of letting them come to us. Also, personal bubbles sometimes we'll like not use as often as we will our main bubble, and we'll kind of like sometimes like we'll have a perfect opportunity to get energy with our personal bubble, like a fire strike or something's just passing by. So watch for projectiles as well, because that was another thing that we just kind of ignoring sometimes. Whereas like there'll be a fire strike coming, it is super easy to like step and get 20 energy from that, but we just wouldn't, right? And the other thing is like sometimes we would kind of prioritize our projected bubble, so we kind of like always have to go for the projected before we went for our personal, right? Whereas keep in mind that there's no particular order there, and you can use either or whenever. Which means that if you see an opportunity, go for the opportunity. Because there's sometimes where like we'd have an opportunity for a personal bubble and we just didn't use it. Then, oh, he's stuck in the corner. And then I'm trying to think.
Wait, I have a quick question about like
good.
last game.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you know how like that Sigma was like really low, right?
Yep.
It like, is it okay to like push through like the shield just to kill him and then back off?
If you think you could do it, it depends on how far you're having to walk. Well, there's like the thing was that it was like especially the one where he's on the right side. So the one where he's on the right side, right? Of you versus the one where you were on the left, right? So there are two times where he's low, right? One where he's on the right side, it was just like Sigma and Reinhardt there, and there weren't really anybody else. And Sigma's off on the right on his own, right? So you could have actually pushed in aggressively because he didn't have anything. He didn't even have shields, and we just kind of backed up instead of chasing him a little bit, right? We don't have to run in suicide, but we can just push forward a little bit. If we feel like we're under pressure, then just back up, right? You don't want to go, like I said, you don't want to get too aggro, but you might want to get, aggro to try to go finish off the kill. And the one on the left, you probably didn't want to push because there were like 5 people, but it was the fact that he was 1 HP and actually in front of shields and right next to us, but we were still. Sorry, there's my little sister yelling in the background here if you can hear her. So we had a shield there. Sorry, we had a shield right in front of us, and he was in front of that, right? Yeah, we weren't shooting at him. We were kind of shooting at these guys on the left instead of shooting at him, who's like right here, 1 HP, right? So it wasn't that you want to suicide to go get him, but you might want to play a little bit more aggressive and make sure you're actually looking at him, right? So back to bubbles. Um, push forwards when you're looking for it. Walk in front of your team when you're looking for personal ones, right? Right click in there, like, say, hey, look at me, shoot at them, right? That way they're looking at us. And then besides that, pretty decent, right? It's just a little bit inconsistent. Grabs, little bit inconsistent, but pretty decent, right? We just, right click, and that's where your grab's going, right? Make sure you're looking for it in the middle of as many people as we can get, right? Just at their feet. That way we can get as many people as possible in it. Preferably, again, target priority, looking for the supports and the DPS though, because the tanks are gonna be the things that are gonna stay alive in it the easiest. And then besides that, just want to look to get consistent at it, right? And like getting good at this game is all about getting consistency. If we're inconsistent at bubble usage, at our ultimate usage, and at our like awareness, then that means that's like we're inconsistent on a lot of different things, and that means that we have to like start to get consistent in those things, right? So inconsistencies can still be pretty bad, because really all inconsistencies means is that you're good like 60% of the time, but you're bad 40% of the time, and you want to make it so that you're good 80%, 90% of the time, and bad 10% of the time, right? Because that's how you get better, as you start to iron out those inconsistencies, right? Now, moving on to mechanics, right? Mechanics, a lot of different things. Just general mechanics look fine. We have fine tracking. We're hitting our right clicks. Maybe I think we need some right I don't think we've been right clicking as much as we were in the past. So we just need to get used to the kind of the right click arcs, because I think we're kind of using right click a little bit more now, and we have to get used to it. But understanding your distance between right click and left click. Left click is any range, right click is longer ranges, left click is any range that you can actually left click, right click is longer ranges, and to burst somebody's health down. You add in a melee if you're right next to them, and if you're too far away, like if you're like back here, then you might want to just left click rather than right click, because it's too far, you can't melee, and it's too far of a projectile, so it's actually not going to be very fast, right? So you're only right clicking like if you're closer, right? Make sure you're right clicking at feet. That way, if it misses them, it's actually hitting the floor like beside them, and that means that if we miss them, it's the floor besides them, it's still hitting them, right? And it's still booping them, right? Now on from there, actions per minute was a pretty massive one. It was just make sure we're doing something consistently and trying to maximize all the different aspects of our time. We're damaging, bubble, damage, keep on damaging, right? We're just not taking pauses, we're not taking breaks. Make sure we're constantly shooting, firing right clicks. That way we're getting ult charge and damage in, right? And then just not take when our team's in the fight, taking the fight. On from there, target priority, right? Shoot at tanks, not DPS and supports. And then I think that is it in mechanics. So on to positioning. Make sure we're using cover, right? Don't stand tier, stand tier. Good positioning is the usage of cover. Bad positioning is the absence of cover. And then that got us killed quite a bit of times, right? Use high grounds as well, so that all acts as good cover. And then make sure that you are not walking too far forwards away from cover, but then also just make sure that you're not just sitting behind cover all the time, because you want to be doing things, right? Now moving on, we actually never talked about thinking how to know whether or not you're winning or losing a fight. So I think why don't we go over that real quick? We'll just go over a little bit over the time. So how to tell whether or not you're winning or losing a fight. All comes down to, and I might be rushing here, so just let me know if you got it afterwards. Is you want to make sure you're paying attention to kill feed, right? When you pay attention to kill feed, that's the top right corner of your screen. You're going to see whether you're up people or down people. When you're up 1 to 2 people, that means that you have an advantage. When you have an advantage, you play more aggressively because they have less people, right? When you're up 2 to 3 people, that is a 1 fight. Again, you play super aggressive because they have less people, and you want to go forwards and get stagger kills, right? On top of that, you don't want to use ults in a 1 fight, but I didn't see you have any problems with that. It was mainly just the aggression that you were struggling with. It also goes the exact opposite way. When you're down 1 to 2, that is a disadvantage. You didn't lose the fight yet, but you are losing the fight, so you might want to play a little bit more passive. Then when you're down 2 to 3, that is a lost fight. No ults, again, not a struggle for you, but you also want to get out if possible, and if you can't get out, then you want to look to let them kill you so you don't end up staggering yourself. Are you familiar with the term staggering?
Yeah.
Yep, so you just don't want to do that. So now on to awareness, right, because we didn't talk about that yet. Pay attention to your health bar, right, so that we're not, when we're low, we're grabbing health pack, we're requesting healing, we're not getting aggressive. And then when you do have health and you do have bubbles as well, right? So that's another, pay attention to your HUD, right? When we have personal bubble available, we can afford to play a little bit more aggressive, right? Because we have our get out of jail free card and we have health available. When we don't have those things, we play passive, right? Pay attention to kill feed, so we know whether or not to get aggressive or passive, and when we're winning and losing fights. Pay attention to health bars of players, so we're not letting Sigma get away for free, right? Pay attention to the players around us, so like, you know, where's our team at, where's the enemy team at, so we can, you know, get bubbles off effectively, and know, big thing is just know when are people shooting at at people, right? If they're shooting at you, you bubble. If they're not shooting at you and not looking at you, bubble's not going to do anything. Pay attention to projectiles so we can land bubbles a little bit better, and then that's it. So main points, probably say number one is coming in at mechanics of all, not necessarily just go pew pew at things, but all the different areas that go in, that kind of feed into that. Then number two is coming in at positioning, as we just died a little bit, because we were out of position sometimes, and we maybe could have gotten more value if we were using off angles as well. I forgot to talk about that when we talked about positioning, but you remember off angles, don't go for flanks. And then number three is probably going to come in at awareness, right? Needing to get consistent at that. And then number four, I'm going to tie for your ultimate and your ability usage, because both of them kind of were evenish and both need to just get consistent, right? Maybe we're good, like, probably say like 70% of the time with both of them, right? But then we just want to iron out that 30% of the time where we're struggling with them, right? But the other areas are a little bit more important to work on. Right, that all makes sense. Do you have any questions on anything we've talked about?
Russia with love.
No, I think it's just like I need to remember to whenever we talked about stuff I needed to focus on, I felt like I focused too much on that one thing instead of bringing it all together. And I think I just need to focus on making sure that I'm doing everything, and being kind of I need to get to the point where I don't really have to think about it. You know what I mean? It's just kind of
so
my habits of the game.
I would say, and I'm saying this, just to mess around, but you're wrong. So, when you are focusing, you want to focus on one thing or a couple things, not everything at once, because when you focus on everything at once, you're actually going to find that it's going to get really overwhelming, and you're not going to know what to work on first. So how it kind of works is when you're trying to improve on anything, you really, really want to try to focus in on the thing you're trying to improve on. So what you do is you take one thing, right? So let's say we're trying to improve on our mechanics, so we're thinking mechanics. So our brain is going to look something like this, where we're going mechanics, 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 mechanics. So when you focus on your mechanics, you're actually going to notice your mechanics start to do a little bit better, right? Because we're thinking about our mechanics and we're actively trying to put an effort into it. And if you do that for a long enough period of time, which one day is not a long enough period of time, you're actually going to start to form it as a habit, right? Maybe after like a week or something, you'll have it down, right? You have to put time and effort into it. It's not going to come, after, playing a couple games. So that's why you might not be seeing results right away, right? So focus on it for like a week, then it'll start to form as like a habit. And once it forms as a habit, now you can move on to something else, right? So you want to focus on one category of things, like we talked about the 5 different categories, or kind of maybe like 3 smaller things, subcategories of things. So like, for example, just focus on mechanics, or if we wanted to, we could focus on like just particular aspects of the mechanics, like we talked about, like with actions per minute and target priority, right? So that's how you want to focus. You don't want to focus on everything, because then it just gets overwhelming, right? And if you feel like of course, don't focus so much on it that you're just forgetting to basic functions, like you're forgetting to, oh yeah, I need to, move around. Oh yeah, I need to use my bubble and use my ultimate, right? You don't want to forget about basic functions because you're focusing on it so much, but you also don't want to focus on everything that you need to work on, because that gets overwhelming, like I said, right? Did that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions?
No, I think that's it, man.
All right. So then